Sac Sports 1140, Double J, Jay Johnson, joined by my guy, F.P. Trey, F.P. Santangelo, that is. Of course, not the father, the junior, the Trey, actually. In reality, it's the Trey.
It's the Trey.
Sac Sports 1140. Been talking about the college football landscape. And right now, we're joined on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline by one of my favorites. I really enjoy checking out David Cobb of CBS Sports. Follows college football and, of course, college hoop, because you got to do both at this point. You got to kind of be a jack of all trades in our business. David, man, look, I'll start right here. As a West Coast boy through and through, even though I went to a UT in the Big 12, are there any schools left in the Pac-12 that matter? I would want to say Cal and Stanford. I hope they don't go independent. I hope something happens. But is there anything left that makes Pac-12 sizzle, or are they going to get snatched up as well?
No, there's really nothing left that makes the Pac-12 sizzle. That's for sure. Look, true college sports aficionados, hey, they love watching Oregon State in that late night time window after a long day of college football, right? It's fun seeing the Beavers make an unexpected run to the Elite Eight under Wayne Tinkle that comes out of nowhere. That can still happen, right? Even if they end up in the Mountain West or some dramatically reconstructed Pac-12. But no, the Pac-12 as we know it is dead. I think that is unfolding before our eyes. And unless tonight the Big 12 rejects Arizona and Arizona State, and they have nowhere left to go but back to the Pac-12, the Pac-12 is dead. And in fact, I think Arizona's already gotten the green light. So it would have to be Utah and Arizona State are the only thing that the Pac-12 is clinging to right now in terms of hopes for future relevance. And I think they are more than likely gone as well.
David, if I'm an average sports fan, and I just want to put this in perspective for people out there, because not a lot of people in California specifically watch college sports. The ratings are just non-existent. How is all this conference movement going to impact me if I'm an average sports fan in my viewing experience?
Well, we'll see. I think there's a case to be made that it enhances the casual fans' viewing experience. Now, I don't think it's necessarily great for the long-term health of the sport if Cal and Stanford are relegated to some inferior status in the college sports world. Hey, but if you are just a football fan and you're looking for a game to watch on Saturday night, chances are you turn on NBC or ABC, CBS, or ESPN, there's going to be a blockbuster game on. With some future NFL players out there running around and two pretty big brands. I mean, Oregon versus Ohio State. Yeah, come on, right? Like Washington versus Michigan in a conference game. Hey, big matchups. I think that's why the TV networks are driving this, because they know they can get viewers for those games that they might not get if it were Washington State versus Arizona in that same time slot.
Joined by David Cobb of CBS Sports, do-it-all college football, college basketball reporter, just has his hands on everything when it comes to the college landscape. David, for me, and you talked about Cal and Stanford, and of course coming here from California, I as much as I like the Pac-12 and the history and what it means, I also am kind of enjoying the fact that I am going to get to see Michigan versus USC a little more, and UCLA gets to play gets to play Penn State. But are we moving towards, at this point, and I know all this really circles around college football, but college basketball really matters, and college baseball has a little bit of an in. Are we really looking at a Big 12, SEC, and Big 10 type, nation, or is the ACC still going to live?
The ACC is being saved at this point in time by the fact that its media rights deal goes through 2036. So 7 or 8 years ago, they negotiated a 20-year agreement with ESPN for their TV rights. So, hey, don't get me wrong. Like Florida State, they are banging on the door and trying to leave, but they can't. They can't. There's nowhere for them to go because they're under contract with that media rights agreement until late into the 2030s. And if they tried to buy their way out of it now, it would be something in the neighborhood of $500 million, right? So the ACC is staying together, not necessarily because everything's hunky-dory, but because of legal and contractual matters. So unfortunately, the Pac-12 was in a much different situation where their media rights agreement was expiring, and their commissioner for the last 18 months told us he was working on getting a new one that was going to be all great and whatnot. But USC and UCLA pull the rug out from underneath them, and then he has trouble getting the value that they needed to hold the whole thing together.
David, do you see a future where this conference realignment really reignites the appetite for college sports here on the West Coast?
I don't see that. The adage, like, hey, I told you guys, like, I'm out in SoCal for a few months, right?
Mm-hmm.
and what we always hear is that there's better things to do on a Saturday. Go to Newport Beach, right? Like,
right. Come on, Manhattan. I mean, we could keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I visited Sacramento a few years ago when I was on the Grizzlies beat and had a good time, right? Like, there's stuff to do, even though y'all aren't like on the coast. Like, it's a poppin' metropolitan area with a fun NBA franchise and a lot of natural beauty surrounding it, and you don't have to drive far to be in the Bay Area and whatnot. Your listeners know what I mean, but I think around the country there's this like, I can't believe they don't like college sports in California, you know. And what are we really seeing here that's going to increase the appetite? Like I said, casual fan who happens to be home on a Saturday night, they're gonna enjoy that USC Michigan game more than they previously enjoyed Pac-12 football. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But in terms of reigniting the passion for college sports, I have a hard time seeing that. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around what we're seeing now being necessarily good for the long-term, like, organic grassroots health of college basketball and football.
David, I'll end on this one. When it comes to the Pac-12, and I think you pretty much said it, it's dead. I don't think there's really no resuscitating it, but I'm interested in the fact of you still have the Utah, you have a San Diego State, you have a ASU. It sounds like ASU is probably going towards the Big 12 because you can't take Arizona and not take ASU. But is San Diego State or Utah or even a Fresno State, are they on the move now? Like, is it all at this point, is all arms on deck for these other conferences?
Yeah, if the Pac-12 wants to survive, it's going to have to do a couple things. It's going to have to reduce its academic standards. And the Pac-12 has always kind of turned its nose up at schools that don't have the proper academic affiliations. And they've sort of always been holier than thou and a little bit uppity about their membership. All right, so you're going to have to go out and swallow your pride and take Boise State and Fresno State and San Diego State. And maybe they don't have tier 1 academic research credentials. And maybe you can get into those schools with something lower than a 32 on your ACT. But it's a sports conference, all right? Like, we're not collaborating here to do academic research. You can do that without being in the same sports conference as each other. And if they want to survive, yes, they'll have to go to the schools that are in the Mountain West currently, and they'll have to be aggressive and creative about maintaining their relevance.
Appreciate your time, David, man. As I said, you're one of my favorite watches. I always keep my eye on what you're doing. David Cobb of CBS Sports, college football reporter, college basketball reporter. Appreciate your time, my man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. David Cobb there, a CBS Sports, man. It's an interesting situation, FP Trey, and we were some West Coast boys, man. West Coast kids through and through, and it's I hate to hear it. I mean, every single person that comes on this show, they tell Pac-12's done. It's dead. Unless, and we had this conversation, unless Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State, Hawaii, you want to get guys like that.
Absolutely.
Schools like that.
Can I tell you one thing real quick
Go ahead.
really made my ears perk up?
Mm-hmm.
The academics. You don't need as hard as as high of a level. Like, you don't need those 4.5 GPAs to get into those schools anymore, right? And I think we're going to see that. That was an interesting point and perspective I've never really thought of. So if you're driving home and maybe your kid's trying to apply to one of those big schools, well, maybe now they got a chance just because. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're in sports too.
Very
right?
true.
That's the thing. You got to get these talented athletes in program.
And you know what? I think that's what's going to hurt Cal and Stanford. I think they're going to be on the outside looking in, kind of a la BYU. There's some other things that you have to register in to get accepted into the school. David Cobb of CBS Sports, he joined us on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Coming up next,